Hi guys, let me start by saying something. I love fitness, I love movement. I am incredibly grateful to fitness and the fitness space and the fitness industry because it has changed my life in many positive ways, and it has helped me change the life of others or helping others change their lives better. However, like everything in life, there are certain aspects of it that drive me crazy. So this video is about the pet peeves of the fitness industry and the things that drive me crazy. My objective is to still be very positive. So even though I will be saying things that bother me, I want to learn something out of it, right? And so I want to provide you a way in which you can think about these things in a more productive way. I just don't want to just vent my guts and my disgust to you. Although I will be doing that. I'll be doing that too. Let me do a disclaimer. I'm gonna try to keep my pet peeves very specific to fitness. So there are a million of things that bother me that have to do how we humans create knowledge, right? And so think about tribalism, for example, right? Like there's this tendency whenever you have a cultural object to create tribes and polarization and all that, and that happens in fitness too, but it's not super specific to it. You'll see it in politics, you'll see it in religion, you'll see it in nutrition, whatever, right? And so you'll see those things in many spaces. So I'm not addressing those because I don't think they're as productive. Maybe in the next video I'm gonna try to keep it to the ones that are very like the pet peeves of fitness specific things, or as specific as I can, right? Like a lot of these things will be expandable, as you'll see, but I'm gonna do my effort to keep it as specific to fitness as I can. So my first pet peeve is the belief that leaner is better, and I was recently triggered because one of my most awesomest athlete, the awesomest, that usually don't fall for this kind of thing, fell, and I was like trying to look for some certain leanness, and it was just because he believed that leanness is better. That's what we're sold all the time, right? Like, and that's what we see, and it's a normal belief. It's very common. However, I have seen that many of my athletes fall for that in a way harsher way, right? Like, and they are looking for this level of leanness that is often not even for aesthetic reasons. If it were for aesthetic reasons, that would be better, because then at least you get what you're looking for, right? But often it's just for like this belief that leanness is better. Just we measure something and you start just looking for decrease, right? And of course, if you're obese, or your body fat percentage is very high, like medically high, 25 or 30 or something above, then of course lower than that is better, and fat accumulation in your organs is not good, and so on. Of course. But once you are in a range of, like, let's say 18 to 13, just the belief that like the lower you get the better starts not being true, right? And that's problematic, because it's not true from the athletic performance side, but it's also not true from the health side, right? And so and it's a problem of like the trade-offs start not working very well, right? Like, so the evident trade-offs are, for example, that you have to change your life to accommodate that, and so it stresses you out, it becomes miserable, eating becomes a problem, going out becomes a problem, and all that compounds into not making you very healthy. But it also goes into the physiological level, right? Like, and so when you decrease too much your body fat percentage and you don't have enough fat in your system, there's worse transfer of nutrients, because fat tissue is not dead tissue. There's, like this whole thing, the underlying belief there is that fat is just dead, it's just energy, like excess of energy stored, and that is not true, right? Like fat tissue is endocrine tissue. It has an endocrinological function, right? Like in the transport of hormones, in the transport of nutrients, but also too much leanness, you can see it in the quality of your hair, automatically makes the membranes of your cell very stiff, and so there's less transfer of nutrients in and out, there's less pliability there, and there's less transfer of energy, so it actually makes you perform a little bit worse, right? And so at some point you start getting very poor returns there, and so just leanness is not necessarily better. And so that drives me crazy, because essentially it makes, for athletes that get too obsessed with that, it makes their lives miserable. Again, not the case of my athlete, but the case of other of my athletes that have made their life miserable looking for that, working really hard for that, and then realizing that once they get there, it's not any better. It's just linear for the same sake of linear, right? Like, it's just like sometimes when you think that making more money is just better, and you don't realize that that comes with a cost, right? Like, that handling that money is harder, like all those things. And so linear is not necessarily better. My second pet peeve is the belief that health and fitness are the same thing. Moreover, they believe that more fitness leads to more health, and like this linear thinking there, right? Like, they kind of equate the thing. I often give my athletes this example. So you're a fish in the sea, and your physical fitness is how well can you swim, how fast you are, how long can you go for how many hours, and so on. And all that is fundamental. Of course, it's going to allow you to provide for yourself and your family. All that is great. However, your health is not just determined by like how good you are at that. Your health is determined by the quality of the water that you live in, the resources that you have available, the quality of the school of fish that are with you, right? Like, all these things matters. But moreover is that when you focus, if you were a fish that focus just on your athletic performance and you don't focus on all these other things too, and how where you put your attention can have an effect on all the things around you, you're not understanding health, right? Like, you're not understanding what inputs are determining your health, right? So it's a very simplistic way of looking at fitness and at health. And what often happens is that it also blinds the athlete into believing that like all you need to do is to maximize performance, and that's always gonna be better, and that's always gonna lead to better health and whatever. And often, like, this will happen to athletes that like they don't understand the emotional cost that race towards more fitness has in them, like the stress of like not getting better or not getting into a particular marker, right? And so that stress stops being worth it at one point, and it starts being the opposite. It starts bringing just stress to your life, and you end up just stressing about not meeting particular competition levels or whatever it is, right? And so that actually makes you unhealthy. You might be even improving your fitness markers, but you actually are getting less healthy, right? And so that drives me crazy. It also makes a lot of loss to work, in the sense that like there's a lot of suffering that doesn't get turned into learning. That happens a lot, and it's just because we look at the whole thing from a simplistic view, not very complex, and so it drives me insane. Good. My third pet peeve, this really drives me crazy, is the poor use of science. So, sure, I'm not talking about marketing and like clickbait articles in which like they just like you read one article in one journal and you generalize and think that is that's the truth, and you report it as an article in which 6 hours of exercise is better than 7, right? Like that poor thing. Again, that's something that doesn't particularly just happen to exercise and fitness. That's just bad education, and people not understanding very well how science works, right? Like not understanding what a peer review system is, not understanding that you have to go and read the research if you're gonna use it, right? Like you have to go and like read the statistics of the thing, right? Like, go beyond the abstract of the paper. mean, most people don't read the abstract of the paper, but whatever, right? Like you have to go and do all that hard work. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when people, like takes anything that is measurable, that you can apply a number to it and is repeatable, and because of that, it becomes science. And the problem is that with that naivete, with that naive view of science that equates science with truth, that's also problematic, because science has never wanted to be truth. Science is a model, and any serious scientist will tell you, like, I'm just doing a model of the world, and when we have more data in 300 years, my model will be obsolete and we will have a better one, right? And like that humility is important. But in the fitness world, anything that has a number in it, and anything that is measurable and repeatable, therefore is science and therefore is truth, and that is not the case. It's just bad. It's just bad thinking. It's not understanding the scientific method all that well. I was having a hypothesis, testing it, and then like re-looking at the hypothesis and seeing if it's good, or if it was good or bad, right? Like it's just numbers for the sake of numbers, and Excel spreadsheets for the sake of Excel spreadsheets, and not a lot of thinking there. So that drives me fucking insane. Yeah, that drives me crazy. That totally drives me crazy. My fourth pet peeve is the moral superiority of fitness, right? Like, so this was super interesting to me. When you move from one discipline that is closely related to another one, you'll find that there is this tribalism, but it happens always from a higher moral place than, like you're superior somehow. So, like at some point in the early 2000s, people started looking at bodybuilders like vain, that they just care about muscles and they just care how they look, and that they're doing exercises for just doing that, and so they lump a bunch of exercises into there, and like a bunch of methodologies. I mean, like, that's just vain, right? Like doing curls is just vain, because all you care about is muscles, and the underlying assumption is like, I'm better than that, I'm like deeper or something, right? And the interesting thing is that, like, when I always go and learn from, I try to learn from the best at any discipline, right? Like, I don't care. And so when you go into, for example, bodybuilding, and the bodybuilder will tell you, like, don't worry about the load, how much weight you can do. That's just ego driven. That is just you wanting to be like stronger. That's for power lifters, that their ego is attached to the number on the dumbbell. You're gonna go and you're gonna try to find a way that works very well for this exercise, so that it burns and it creates more muscle hypertrophy. And so it's funny that they use the word ego, and that they say like more load is just ego, right? Because you go and talk with the power lifters, and they will tell you, no, the bodybuilders it's just ego driven, and they just want to look good, and it's not about like being strong, it's just about like looking good, and it's just an ego driven solution. And then you go and look at the Olympic weightlifters, and the same thing happens, right? Like the decisions that the other one making are all based on ego and on vanity and on whatever, right? Like the same thing with like runners that think that like anybody that does strength training is kind of an ego thing, because they just want to look good, but like we are actually doing the hard work. Bikers, cyclists think that they're better than runners because the Tour de France is the most dreading event of the world, and they have it better, right? And so there's always this moral superiority of like what you're doing is the best, right? And so you look at the other one, like what you're doing is subpar, like look at you just like walking or whatever, right? And so that moralism drives me insane, because I really have trained myself and focused myself on trying to see and learn the good on everything, right? Like, and so I'm like, you're missing an opportunity here, my friend, of what does this person know that you don't? Go and steal that, and use it, put it on your on your toolkit, right, like of skills. It's like thinking that like, I don't want to learn German, that German is stupid. No, man, go on and see what those dudes know that you don't. Right, like, look at that perspective. And so that just drives me crazy. Good, and the last pet peeve that I bring today, and I have a longer list, but I want to keep it contained, is that everything in the past is wrong, right? Like this one might not be super specific, but it does happen, and is this need to change everything, like everything that people were doing 20 years ago is probably obsolete. And that might be true with computers, but human bodies haven't changed that much in the past 20 years. So whatever was working very well then is probably still working very well today. And so that need to sell something new is more of a marketing thing, and it exploits that need for something new. Like that, and it translates, for example, to randomness and variance for the sake of randomness and variance. When like actually going back and learning what was working 200 years ago is super useful and super productive, right? And so that drives me crazy too, that everything from the past is obsolete and wrong. That is not the case. That is not the case at all, because this is a practical thing, right? Like, this is a practical tradition, practical knowledge. So it's not like science when we're like looking at things from new ways. It's not like we're gathering more data. There are a lot of things that still work, that still are there, right? That work. And so that need for newness, just for the sake of newness, and like disregarding anything from before, like, as obsolete, that's drive me crazy, because there's so much good stuff there, right? Like, it's like, you can read things from 300 years ago and they'll be obsolete in some ways, but there's still some essential truths there that will make you immensely better, right? And so the same is with exercise, but even more so, right? Because again, our bodies haven't changed so much, right? Like in the past 300 years, like changes in human nature and physicality take a long time, right? And so there's a lot of good stuff that happens that we just disregard just because. Good. Those are my pet peeves. I feel a lot better than that I got them out of my chest, and they're not in me anymore. And I hope you enjoyed that and learned something from there. And I hope this is an invitation to also have a little bit of, I think there's a recurring theme there, and is to have a little bit more of a systemic thinking and understanding fitness within a complex web of connections that have to do more with interpersonal relationships, how you feel about yourself and how you stand in the world, your finances, your your family relationships, your social environment, your environment, physical environment, and so on, right? And so just complexify the thinking a little bit, and hope that helps.